Hello, my name is Marteal Lamb. I am a bankruptcy and contract law attorney, and I am going to do a CLE on the Payroll Protection Act under the CARES program called Show Me the Money. I'm going to be going over several items in regards to the loan forgiveness, the EIDL grant, and a few related provisions, as well as some pros and cons and a little bit of my opinion, of course, on the act. I'm going to get an overview and then I'm going to jump right into it. First of all, a little bit about my background. Like I said earlier, I'm a licensed attorney in Arizona and Florida. I'm licensed in Florida in 2 bankruptcy districts, the Middle District of Florida and the Northern District of Florida. Florida has several, I think about 7 bankruptcy districts, so you can actually be certified or allowed to practice in more than 1 district in Florida. But here in Arizona, I'm licensed here. However, here in Arizona, there's only 1 federal district. It's the District of Arizona. So once you get covered for the district here, you're all set in the entire state. I came across the PPP because some of my business law clients, some of my contract law clients were asking me, I'm thinking about applying for it. I am applying for it. What does it cover? How do I make sure I get my forgiveness? And I also wanted to go over it for my own, personal curiosity. I have banking relationships with 3 of the banks that off and on have been offering the PPP. Of course, through the SBA provided by the CARES Act. And I just thought it would be interesting to see, what's in it. And also I attended a CLE run by a sort of an independent lender related to the program. And they did 90% of it was great. But when I looked at the actual statute, not everything was completely accurate. And there are a few things rolling around out there that are not 100%. So I thought I would just address those in a little bit of a warning for attorneys to maybe share with your clients, or if you're thinking about doing a PPP or PPP/EIDL, that you can go ahead and take advantage of that. After I get done, well, that's sort of my background. I'm going to be doing a little bit of an overview survey of the banks that offer or have offered off and on the PPP loan, how they've changed and evolved, some of the different requirements, and a little bit of the process, like the beginning stages of the process. Then I'll get right into the PPP, what are the requirements, what are some of the definitions, what's the process, loan eligibility, loan forgiveness eligibility, things of that nature. I'm going to go into EIDL and hopefully forestall any questions you might have. However, if you do have some questions, feel free to email me. My email is on the PowerPoint, marteal@marteallaw.com. I'll try to make myself available. So let's get right into it. First, I'm going to be doing a review of banks offering the PPP applications. Now, if you look on the PowerPoint, I actually have PowerPoint going over this with links to some websites. Of course, those websites were good as of April 13th, 2020. Things may change. It's the internet. I also had 8.5 by 11 on Bank of America specifically because they offered some specific guidance in a spreadsheet. I also have attached some information, the application straight from the SBA, so that may not be exactly the same, but that's the general format of what the SBA is looking for. So you can take a look at that. It's in the attachments. So feel free to page through that as I'm talking or afterwards. So now we're going to get right into it. The banks offering these PPP applications, again, off and on. Now, I started out, just as a background, I started out offering my clients some information, and that started on April 7th, 2020. I went through and looked through about 7 or 8 banks and sort of what their requirements are, were they offering it, weren't they offering it, how did you get started, et cetera, and found out that even though most of them were very similar, there were a couple of differences. Then I went back when I got ready to think about doing this CLE. I said, well, let me go back and just do a quick overview, grab some websites, and some of the requirements had changed. Some of the, there were little changes. So I figured I'd show you how it changed, and you can make your own decisions. We are going to start with a bank that I actually have a relationship with, a banking relationship with, Wells Fargo. Now, Wells Fargo, they made it very clear from the beginning that that they wanted to do business clients only. That's just the way it was. They didn't start on day one because, as I've heard, the CARES Act was sort of rushed, and they supposedly didn't give the banks the required information, the information the banks needed to get their processes started, the underwriting guidelines and what have you, until the day before, or some people say the night before, they were supposed to have a rollout. So the banks, of course, not all of them were ready to go on day one. And Wells Fargo was one of those banks that wasn't ready to go on day one. Bank of America was one of the few banks that was right on it, I believe, because they participated in something like this before. So initially, Wells Fargo, they weren't offering applications right away. And then when I checked on April 7th, 2020, Wells Fargo said that they had reached their applications limit for the $10 billion that they had set aside, that they had committed. So they weren't accepting applications as of the 7th. So business owners like me, we're out of luck if we have a business relationship only with Wells Fargo as of the 7th. However, when I went back on the 13th to recheck, my personal banker, he had called me. I hadn't called him back, but he let me know that they were accepting. So I went back on the 13th, and Wells Fargo business customers, you can register online and get into what I call the online queue, where you're sort of waiting. They'll send you an application in a few days. That was the idea on the 13th, and of course today is the 19th. So it's been a few days. So of course that could have changed. And I believe, just casually, that as of Friday, which would have been the 16th? Yeah, the 16th. Wells Fargo was prepared for at least some of its clients that had gotten in the online queue. I got in the online queue just for kicks and giggles, and I got an email saying that, a notification saying, yeah, go on and put in your application. So if you got in the online queue does actually work. They do notify you. So as of the 13th, they were available for people you can get in line. As of the 7th, you couldn't. But 13th, you can get in line. What is that? 3 or 4 days later, you can put in your application, which just starts the process. So that's Wells Fargo. Now, again, you need to remember that there's 3 categories that I'm sort of going to go through. There's business owners who don't have an existing relationship with a bank. I'll call that off the street. Then there's business clients who don't have a business relationship with the bank. They don't have business credit or business checking, but they do have a business. They have a personal checking or maybe a personal credit or something like that, but they do own a business separately. And that's sort of the second category, a personal relationship, banking relationship. Then the third category is, a business that has a business relationship with that bank. So Wells Fargo is only allowing people who have a business banking relationship, whether it's a line of credit or business banking, small business banking. That's what they're allowing right now. So if you're off the street or if you just have a personal banking relationship, no way. And that's not uncommon. So the next bank is America First FCU. America First, actually, they started from the very beginning. Well, not the very beginning. They started, they weren't ready from the very beginning, but they started out on April 7th, 2020, saying business members only can, get in the online queue and register, and they'll get information, about the applications process. Now, when I went back and checked on April 13th, 2020, for America First FCU, I have the website there, so you can check for yourself. But when I went back on the 13th to check, it didn't look like they were offering PPP anymore. When I went on the 7th, it said business members only. Okay, you can't come off the street, too bad. But then I didn't even see any process or any way to move forward for business clients. And of course, this is openly saying I don't have a business relationship with America First, so maybe you have to go onto the America First online banking for business. But just as a regular person, you couldn't access the application or even an online queue to get in the waiting list. So take that for what it is. Anyway, next is Ameris Bank. There's not really much to say about America First FCU because I couldn't get anything. On the 13th, I got it on the 7th. Ameris Bank is saying account holders only. So it's a little bit vague. As of the 7th, they're saying account holders only. I checked on the 13th. It looks like it was very similar. Only they added information. They said contact, your lender. And they were giving a 60-day processing time. I'm assuming that's from the time they receive a completed application to the time they get back to you and it's gone through underwriting or what have you. Now, it sounds like kind of a long time for a small business that's having difficulties. But because none of the other banks have given any sort of processing time, there's no way to really compare it. 60 days might be good, depending on how fast other banks are doing it. But at least they're giving you an estimate. So that's Ameris Bank. Now, for SunTrust, which I do have a full disclosure, I have a relationship, a business banking relationship with SunTrust. And you might not know this. SunTrust is in the process of joining with BB&T. I believe it's a merger where they're going to both become Truist. So I got some literature on that because I do have a banking relationship with them, with SunTrust, not with BB&T. They've done the name change, but when you go, at least when you go on the SunTrust side, you can still go on the SunTrust online banking, the business banking, and get whatever done. At least as of the 13th, you could. 13th of April 2020. So anyway, just to let you know that if you're with SunTrust or if you're with BB&T, even though you may start the process with SunTrust or BB&T, you may, during the application time or during the underwriting time, they may switch over to Truist. So you shouldn't ignore any correspondence or any emails or letters or what have you that come from Truist because they're all coming together. Anyway, so SunTrust said that you had to get into the online queue, and that was so as of this April 7th, 2020 and April 13th, 2020. I did not get on the online queue, so I don't know how fast the process is. But that's the idea: is that you get in the waiting list, give them your email, give them your initial information, register, and then they'll send you a mandatory link to the business application. Now, keep in mind, this is business clients only for Truist, BB&T, SunTrust, whatever you want to call it. So there's no off the street. There's no, you have a personal relationship, banking relationship. You have to have a business banking relationship. That business clients only. Now, they didn't give a date as to when you had to be a business client. Is it as of the date of the application? Is it as of 60 days before the application? Is it as of the first of the year? They didn't really say, so it's hard to determine. Now the next one, Bank of America. Bank of America was a little bit different. They had kind of an evolution. They were ready on day one, at least to start the process. As of the 7th, Bank of America was saying that, and they changed. As of April 7th, 2020, they said, okay, well, you have to be a business client. You have to have some sort of business relationship to go through for the PPP. Now you can have a small business banking account or a small business, credit, line of credit, credit card, what have you. Or as of April 7th, they said that you can, if you didn't have an existing relationship on the business side, you could become a business client. You could open up a business account or open up business credit with them and become a business client of theirs and then move forward with the PPP or PPP/EIDL application. So that was as of the 7th. Now, when I went back, they had a lot more specifics. When I went back, they had an 8.5 by 11 sheet about the application and the process, yada, yada, yada. I've attached it. Bank of America, they made it very clear that the PPP application is online only. Now, it may be that way for the other banks, and they just didn't say so, but Bank of America is very clear. You can't walk into a banking center and apply for the PPP. You can't get into the process. You can't ask questions at physical banks. You have to go straight online. Now, they're accepting clients with a magic date, February 15th, 2020. And that date actually is repeated in the PPP section provisions. So that you have to have small business checking or small business credit. So as of February 15th, 2020, you have to have small business checking and small business credit, or small business checking and no other credit relationship with another bank. So the foundation is you have to have small business banking with Bank of America as of February 15th. So if you got started on February 16th, 17th, as of the 13th of April, forget it. And so that changed from earlier in April. Earlier in April, you could start a business relationship with them and keep on going. And they didn't say whether or not it was retroactive from those who got on the online queue and started a business banking relationship with them as of April 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 2020, but didn't have one before. And then they come back on the 13th and they say, April 13th, and say, well, you have to have a business banking relationship with us as of February 15th. So little confusion as to whether or not you can still get in under the wire. I would think so, but you'd have to contact Bank of America for that specifically. Okay, so as of April 13th, 2020, you have to have a minimum of business banking relationship with Bank of America as of February 15th, 2020. Now, you can have business checking as a foundation and business credit, whether it's a credit card, line of credit, what have you, on the business side. Or you can just have the business banking relationship and then not have any credit relationship with any other bank. And then the PPP application would start your business credit relationship with Bank of America. So you can do either or. You have to apply online. And this is the good thing about Bank of America. There's no queue. There's no online waiting period where you got to wait for them to send you the application. You just go straight through Bank of America, small business online banking, or Cash Pro service through Bank of America. So it's online only, like I said before. So you can do small business online banking or the Cash Pro, and you can go straight through and start the application. So you don't have to wait. You can just go right to it. So if you do have a Bank of America banking relationship that's existed before, February 15th, 2020, then, you can go right ahead. Now, they don't give any information as to the interest rate. All I have is a statutory interest rate. But they say that after you do the application through, Bank of America, business banking, or the Cash Pro, then they will call you, they will email you for the documentation and email you a confirmation of your application submission that they received it, and then they'll process it. They say as soon as possible, so I don't know if that's better or worse than Ameris Bank, because as soon as possible is kind of vague, but they said they'll contact you at that point. And again, don't go to your personal banker. Don't go to one of the branches expecting information on the PPP application that you put in, because they won't have it. It has to be online. I'm assuming you can contact someone through email, but they say that they'll notify you. So it's don't call us, we'll call you. I guess that's because of the huge volume of applications. There's a lot of need out there. There's a lot of suffering. So a lot of people, who own businesses need some help. So I imagine they're up to their eyeballs right now. So Bank of America has a lot of information on their process. So if you've got a Bank of America banking relationship, you can just go forward with your application, and you could for a while now. You can do the same with Wells Fargo, I believe. But the other banks, they're not 100% sure as of April 13th, 2020. And again, it's been a few days. And these things are changing from day to day. Okay, so next is Fifth Third. And full disclosure, I do have a relationship with Fifth Third, so take it for what it's worth. And again, the next page PowerPoint, I do have a list of the websites if you want to check it out. So, Fifth Third, they say you can't apply online. You have to register and get on the online queue where they send you a link to the application. That was as of the 7th, and it didn't change as of the 13th. I have the website there, so it may be, this has been 5 days, so it could be that you can go straight through and do the application now, but as of April 13th, 2020, you still had to go through the online queue, and you've got the website right there. Now the next one is Atlantic Capital. Atlantic Capital, they made it very clear, just like the majority of the banks, that they're not accepting off the street, they're not accepting personal, they're accepting just their business relationship clients. They didn't make it clear as to whether or not it was business credit or business checking, but Atlantic Capital made it very clear that you have to have a business relationship with them. So as of the 7th, April 7th, that's all the information you really got. On the 13th, they said they were ready to issue applications. So you enroll, you get in the online queue to get an application emailed to you. However, they didn't allow the general public, business people. You can't be off the street. You can't have just a personal relationship with them and have a business separately, like a separate business account somewhere else. You have to be a business member with that specific bank, with Atlantic Capital. So that's Atlantic Capital. And Bank United, a little more vague than the other banks. They said business clients first. So they didn't necessarily say you couldn't come off the street and initiate a relationship and then down the road they would get to your application, even if you didn't have a business relationship. They didn't say that they wouldn't let existing personal banking people, members, to do an application later. They just said business clients first. So take it as what they said. I can only repeat what the information they have available as of April 13th. So, and then, if you want something even more vague, wait until we get to HPP Capital. HPP Capital just said check the website for details. So it was a little bit less information than the other banks. If you have a business relationship with HPP Capital, my advice is to check with their website and see if they have more information, if they've updated. But as of the 13th, there wasn't a lot to go on. I do have their website on the materials, so you can check. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get a lot of information on them. And so I'd say in all, Bank of America has been ready to go first. They were first to sort of be ready to push it through. Now, I don't know what their application's limit is. If they have a financial limit and they've been ready to go from the beginning, they could shut it down. But because they've got the most details, because they are allowing people to go all the way through, they seem to be prepared. Now, Wells Fargo, of course, initially they had the online queue where you had to wait for the email. But now they're sending out notifications to people who were on the email list that they're ready to do the application. So that also is a possibility. But both of these assume that you have an existing business relationship. You can't just come off the street. Now, Bank of America, if you caught Bank of America at the very beginning where you could initiate a business relationship and then initiate the application, you have more of a chance. But with Wells Fargo, business clients only. So that sort of goes over the different review of the various banks. Of course, that's not an exhaustive list. If you need additional banks or if your bank wasn't listed, then you should go ahead and contact either the SBA or your lender and see if they will give you some information. It seems as though the majority of the banks are requiring an existing relationship, a business relationship. There are only a couple of banks that weren't very specific about, requiring a business relationship before they would go forward with the PPP. And I guess it makes sense. I mean, they want to prioritize their business clients first because they've got information on them. They want to, give them priority as appreciation for the relationship that's been built, for the business that you've already given them going forward. So that's the overview of the banks. Now we're going to get into the PPP under the CARES Act. The CARES Act is a new legislation. Now, the synopsis on the entire CARES Act is the intent was to amend the 1986 Internal Revenue Code. So I'm assuming that at least a portion of it is going to be inserted, of the CARES Act is going to be inserted into the Internal Revenue Code. But the PPP specifically, that section, section 1002, that is actually amending the Small Business Act, which makes sense because it's about small businesses. However, the entire CARES Act is not about business at all. There's sections regarding unemployment, there's sections regarding minority assistance, there's sections regarding health care, which makes sense since it's in response to the COVID and the financial crisis, which started before. But so it's not really clear as to what section goes where. I didn't get too deep in there because I just want to do the PPP and EIDL, and those were under the Small Business Act, so that made it a little bit simpler. Okay, so basically it's not, the government isn't just giving out free money. Well, some people say they are, but this specific portion of the CARES Act, 1002, the PPP, they are federally guaranteeing private lenders to lend, and they're setting aside a certain amount for that. So they're backing it up, but the private lenders are the ones who are actually lending the money. Of course, they're getting paid and compensated and guaranteed. They're getting certain assurances, as well as financial remuneration, financial payment. So, they don't get nothing out of this. They're not doing volunteer work on this. So that's the idea, is that the government is not totally giving out the money. They're just subsidizing or guaranteeing funds that are being loaned by private lenders, which is why there is some government involvement. Now, the PPP was intended to assist small businesses, underrepresented businesses like nonprofit organizations, veterans organizations, tribal businesses, solo practitioners are included. So solos, independent contractors, self-employed, they're all supposed to be included. And there are provisions specifically for solos, self-employed, 1099, independent contractors, whatever you want to call it. So that is a good part of the act, in my opinion. The documents are, pretty standard. IRS, payroll tax filings, 1099s, income and expenses, which is a little bit different. Sometimes private lenders won't accept P&Ls by themselves, and they may not accept it this time because this isn't the only documentation that's being requested, and there's no statement in here that the lenders can't ask for additional documentation. Excuse me. So the idea of the act is that you have to have 500 or less employees. However, and this is why it's important to have the actual statute in front of you, or at least review the statute. It's not just 500 or less employees. That's sort of the broad strokes of it that everybody's giving, but it's 500 employees or less per physical location. So if you have, if you have 2 or 3 branches and you've got 499 in one location, and you've got 499 in another location, you're still good because it's per physical location. Now, it doesn't go into the impact of telecommuting. It doesn't go into the possibility of an employee working part-time here and part-time there. It doesn't give any specifics, but the general broad strokes of it is that you can have more than 500 total as long as it's 500 or less per location. So you can have 300 in one location and 400 in another location, and you're not kicked out just because you've got 700. Although that sort of defeats the whole small business purpose, it's in the wording of the statute, so I wanted to just go ahead and share it. So you can have 500 or less. You can have 500 or less per location, and then there's a third section. So, drum roll, please. You can also have the administration's standard. So if you equal the administration standard, and they don't go into specifics on that, then you might still be good to go if you have more than 500 employees. So you need to, if you have more than 500 employees and you're still interested in the CARES Act, PPP, or in the EIDL combined with the PPP, then you might want to inquire with the administration what their standard is and see if there's a possibility that you could meet it. Now, you want to make sure to make this inquiry before you apply for the loan, because you don't want to go through all the time and effort and trouble of applying and going through the whole process and maybe even mistakenly getting some funds and then find out that you're not eligible for the loan forgiveness, and then you've got problems down the road because you didn't fit the administration's standard. So you want to make sure about that. So the definition of an employee, you want to know, well, what exactly is an employee? Well, they give a definition. It's a full-time employee, part-time employee, or other. I'm assuming that other means independent contractor, 1099, maybe, I don't know, telecommuter. They don't define other. So it could be a seasonal worker. Maybe that's what they're talking about, but they don't really define the other. So employee is pretty broadly defined. Maybe they're going to let the administration or independent lenders determine what other might mean, or maybe the courts will have to decide. Anyway, the maximum loan, everybody's saying like 2.5, and that's true, but it's not all of it. The maximum loan is actually 2.5, the average payroll cost of the 12 months before the loan is processed. So let's say you apply, April 1st, and your loan is actually processed on April 5th. Well, then you're going to go back 12 months from April 5th.